What's good, gamers? Alright, today is Thursday, and on Tuesday and Thursdays, we read articles to understand a little bit more about what's going on so I can stay informed. And also, I would love to model how to read articles, how to study, and how to basically get work done. I'm modeling a Pomodoro technique. Basically, a Pomodoro technique is cutting up time into small little chunks, putting in breaks in there, and making sure that those small little chunks have a nice little goal for what you're trying to accomplish. So you can make a SMART goal and follow that SMART goal with this whole process. I found 20 minutes works really well for me personally. Other people like to set their timer for 25 or 30 minutes. Just because your timer is short doesn't mean that it's bad or anything. That's just what you need. I will be discussing or reading about imposter syndrome. Shall we hit it? Let's go. Why I'm not looking at imposter syndrome and gaming specifically is because there isn't any articles on imposter syndrome and gaming. Most of the imposter syndrome articles that I've rolled up on have mostly been on performers, students, doctors, someone that has a lot of high pressure. When we're talking imposter syndrome, we're talking about high performers and the fear of performing or not being able to perform. Deep feelings of inauthenticity and fear you'll be found out as a fake. I think this is important to highlight. Feelings of inadequacy may not be a bad thing. Small doses, because that sense of anxiety kind of pushes us forward to make sure that we're doing something. But at the same time, if there's too much anxiety, it shuts us down, or too much worry, it shuts us down, and then we can't function. It's going to lead to overwork and paralyzing feeling of fear. As I was walking my dog this morning thinking about imposter syndrome, we've created a gamified version to experience imposter syndrome. Can you name that game? I like this. Most people she observed are self-absorbed. That's so true. Highlight this. Because the idea that Colleen is an imposter probably has never crossed her team's mind. So it's almost like this hypervigilance of your own self, but in reality, other people don't care that much. But we think they care, but we're not that important to other people sometimes, most of the time, especially with imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can create performance anxiety, lead to perfectionism, burnout, depression. So great things. Okay, I really do like these things that they're giving you, like talk to somebody, share your feelings, understand that it could be just be in your head. I think everyone needs a friend like that. They can slap and be like, is that real, dude? It's not real. Slap you. Hey, you gotta find a friend that's willing to slap you too. I love this. These are really good. And this is just awareness, because how can you do this if you can't be aware of what's going on? This is really interesting too. With imposter syndrome, there's usually this differentiation between working hard and being competent. Working hard is like you just doing something, but competency is like you actually understand why you're working or how you're working is going to help you or build that skill and why that skill is good. It's essentially like when you copy someone's test or maybe, but copy someone's homework and you're getting ready for the test or you're in the study group and you're just trying to understand what everyone is talking about. That's just work. But the competence piece is you actually understand what's going on in the classroom or what's actually going on in the game. For example, if I'm playing Zoe and I'm trying to do her QRQ combo, I can see how it works, but I may not know the optimal times to QRQ or RQQ. I may not understand when the best times to do it are. Now that's a difference between work and competence. Oh, I love this. Individuals with imposter syndrome may sabotage themselves as a way of holding back due to feelings of being a fraud. Here's the thing too. The fear of being found out because you're fake. So you're not going to perform as well and then you look more sus versus like you going hard in the paint and doing what you need to do, then you're just going to blend in. But if you act sus, I mean, you'll be sus. This is a cog reframe right here. This is an actual action. So what a cognitive reframe is basically is thinking about something from a different perspective. However, you can't do any cognitive reframes if you're not aware of what you're already telling yourself. So understanding that self-talk first, and then you're able to actually like change your behavior and catch yourself when you're doing it. But if you can't catch yourself, you can't make any changes. Okay, I like this. This is more awareness. So you're actually building a list of your strengths and being aware of them. Oh, I like this. Ask for others' input. Make sure you trust those people, maybe the same people that are willing to slap you. Most people overestimate their abilities. People with imposter syndrome underestimate their abilities. This overestimation of abilities is kind of related to like that Dunning-Kruger effect, where people believe that they're better than something than they actually are. And it's almost as if the people with imposter syndrome flip it on its head and be like, oh, I'm not good enough. If I had to take one or the other, I'd say I'd rather fall into Dunning-Kruger, because at least it would make me think I'm confident to do something, then I'm willing to fail and learn from it, versus like having imposter syndrome and then being paralyzed to try. So if I had to take one, I'd say Dunning-Kruger. Go for that one. Okay, accept that perfection is unrealistic and costly. All these things within imposter syndrome, they're cognitive distortions. All these things are cognitive distortions. High standards and feel shame, insecurity, and low self-esteem when you don't meet expectations. So it's also managing expectations. And what is perfect? Perfect is so subjective. There's no such thing as perfect. Know you need to develop your competencies at certain times in your career. Yes. Be honest about what you know and don't know, and seek advice from experts on your unit or in your your organizations. I think this is so paralyzing for a lot of people. I know if I fell into this trap too, where I don't want to ask for help because if I ask for help, then it makes it seem that I'm stupid or know that I don't know what I'm doing. But at the same time, like, how the hell else are you going to learn? And I really do like to remind you that there's a sequence to things. What I love about games is that they teach you things sequentially. Level 1 is easy. You master that skill, maybe walking, controlling the camera, maybe just auto attacking, any of the basics. And then as you progress, the game gets harder because it assumes that you have mastered or practiced those fundamental skills to build upon. That's just like school. You don't learn calculus day one. They teach you addition, then subtraction, multiplication, and you work up to calculus. So in the same way, why can't life be like that too? How do you expect to be great at something if you don't know the fundamentals of what you're doing? Sequentially understanding that this is how life is supposed to be and that's how you're supposed to learn things. This is huge. Authenticity is so giant. This is who I am. I know this is what I know. And at the same time, I know this is where I think I kind of know, but I'm not sure. And really putting yourself out there and learning how to ask for help or even advocating for yourself. Maybe we can reframe this whole thing of like, oh, I don't know, or I'm less than because I don't know, to, oh, let me self-advocate for me or advocate for myself and my needs and my knowledge for me to get better at what I'm doing versus like, oh shit, I'm stupid. Switching from weakness and vulnerability to self-advocation. Agreed. Fear is a useful emotion as long as it doesn't escalate to the level of paralyzing behaviors. Fear is good. Fear is amazing. It keeps us alive. But the thing about your brain is it has a difficult time interpreting, is this real? I'm a die fear? Like this saber-toothed tiger lion is going to kill me for real kind fear. And, oh, I'm going to fail this test and then everyone's going to think I'm stupid. Then I'm going to die fear. Is it real? Building competence leads to competency. Ooh, I like that. Those with imposter syndrome generally are intelligent, thoughtful, and capable, but lacking self-confidence. I truly believe that too. And it's almost as like most people that I talk to with imposter syndrome, there's like a deep humility within them. They don't want to brag. They don't want to say that they're all that in a bag of chips, but because of that, it affects their confidence. So balancing your value of humility with an actual realistic standpoint of how good you are. It's a lot of building your knowledge, building your competency. How much do you know and how can you understand what you know? Because if you feel like you're fake because you don't know why what you're doing, you don't have confidence. But if you have points of evidence of, yes, I've done this in my past and this has worked, I've read about this, I've tried this. When people ask you why or try to challenge what you think, you're actually able to form an opinion and explain your thoughts, and then you feel more confident in what you're doing versus like, I don't know. The takeaways here were find people, good mirrors, people around you that have a nice perspective of you and your skills and give you honest, objective, and loving critiques and pieces of feedback, not flame, but feedback. Paying attention to your self-talk, how you see yourself, what are you telling yourself? Are those things empowering, like you got this, or like, oh dude, I don't know about this one, man, everyone's think you're stupid? What are you telling yourself? That really affects how you feel about yourself. And if you can't have that nice voice in your head, to me that means you may be listening or focusing on those negative things instead of the more realistic, objective, and sometimes positive things. I kind of do like make a list of your strengths. I think that people downplay their strengths or just think that, oh, I should have these strengths or whatever, and having just a nice reminder of, oh, I'm good at these things, I'm good at this, I spent a lot of time doing this. I think that's great. Acceptance that perfection is unrealistic and costly. I think it's hard to really swallow that because everyone's trying to strive for perfection or strive to be the best. Remembering it though that it's impossible. You can get close to it, but what does that mean, being perfect? I would even extend that question of, what does it mean to be perfect for you? Know that you'll develop competencies and at certain times in your career. I think that's huge because something that this is talking about is how you expect things to be, how you thought it should be. Again, here's a should, there's your cognitive distortion, how things should be, how things could be. And I think the challenge with that is because you have this certain expectation, and if it doesn't go that way, then you feel real bad. At the same time, understanding that it's a journey and a process in itself. Like the video games, you don't just go to level 100, you start level 1. So in the same way, you're going to pick up different skills and maybe different items along the way when you need them. And that's developed over time and not all at once. Be willing to be uncomfortable and move through your fear. I think this one is one of the most challenging things because as humans, something that we don't like is feeling uncomfortable. Like we hate it. It's cold, we put a jacket on. The awkward situation, we're like, get out of there. Actually being able to sit with yourself and sit in this uncomfortability and sit in the possible shittiness of, ah, damn, I don't like this feeling of maybe putting myself out there or trying to learn this thing or watch my own VODs or whatever that uncomfortable thing is. I challenge yourself to do it. I think at the other side, you'll realize your brain is telling you you're going to die. Everyone's going to think you're stupid, which means isolation, aka I'm going to die. But instead, realizing that's just something you're telling yourself and ask yourself, will you die? And then I bet you on the other side of that experience, let's try to focus on what we were to take away. And let's start with the positives. You didn't die. And then let's move on from there. I think that may be one of the most challenging things, but again, one of the best things for you to do is sit in that uncomfortableness and try to fight that internal fear. And lastly, the building competence leads to competency. building your knowledge, understanding what is going on, why it's happening, why you're doing things. Once you're able to have that informed opinion or have those pieces of evidence of why you're doing the things you do or how come you see the way that you see, the more confident you'll be when people ask you questions or you need to explain yourself. I love all these things. They're very tangible, very nice, very short and succinct. This one is raising to the level of your incompetence. What physician's self-assessment of the performance reveals about imposter syndrome in medicine. And this article is from 2018. How does feedback get received if a physician has imposter syndrome? Many physicians, even those advanced in their career settings, question the validity of their achievements, progressive independence, and career advancements. Imposter syndrome occurred at the extreme end of the spectrum of self-doubt. Here's the thing too, even positive feedback could not buffer participants' insecurities, which participants rarely shared with their colleagues. The reason why I love reading these types of articles too is because when we read about other high performers, not just like video game athletes, we're talking about doctors here, people who have studied for like undergrad is 4 years, and medical school is another 4 years, and internships like another 2, 4, I don't know, years. So even these professionals that are in charge of making sure that you're okay, your health is fine, even after 8, 12, 10 years of training, they still have this, or maybe have symptoms of this. I think this is critical. If you have this extreme self-doubt, then it really negatively impacts the way that you receive feedback and what you can see. So this imposter syndrome is almost as if it's like this lens that you look through the world through, that they just look for more negative things instead of what they're actually good at as doctors. That's my break. So I'm just gonna be stretching because I think that's something really important with this Pomodoro. I'm gonna start my timer for 5 minutes, and during this 5-minute break, I'm going to stretch because I think stretching is super important. What we forget is that like everything's connected. When people think of gaming or studying or whatever, they just think about, oh, it's just my fingers. What I think people forget though is that like what moves your wrists? Your shoulders. What's connected to your shoulders? Your neck. What's connected to your neck? Your core. Goes down to your legs. Everything's connected. Even your brain makes everything move. So how are you supposed to improve or do well if you're not taking care of your body or your mind? Not just your fingers and your hands or whatever, because I think that's where most of players I work with focus on. It's like fingers, hands, and wrists, but really it's like your whole entire body and your brain and taking care of all of it. Because if you don't, you're gonna be tight. Then your tightness, you're gonna be thinking about that, maybe preoccupied in the game. And then how are you supposed to pay attention to the game if you're like, oh my gosh, my back's so tight and it's sore? Really thinking about how all of these things are connected and how you can really ensure that you are at your peak. When you do these types of stretches, especially after you've been stretched in a really long time, that you listen to your body about what is enough, what is too much. Just like competency, your body works in the same way, man. Like I wouldn't want you to go to the gym and just try to deadlift 300 pounds. You're gonna get hurt. So how do you start? You start with 50 pounds. Do 10 reps. Then you work up slowly. That's the same way we build competency. Small little bits and pieces that we understand how it works, that we can do it, and then we move forward. Also, make sure you drink water. Water is very, very helpful. Super underrated. Helps with cramps, keeps your brain going. The thing that I used to think was like, oh, I don't need to drink water because then I have to pee and then I have to get up and like break my studying. But now that I'm here, that wasn't such a great thing to think. I needed to take a break. Yo, taking breaks is kind of imperative. Take them. I think what we forget too is that like when we do take breaks, it does give us a little bit of respite so we can keep going at a super high level. Break over. I hope everyone got a nice little stretch in too. Hope everyone got some water. Self-doubt verbally affects clinicians at all stages of career. Transitions may be exacerbated, make it worse. Medical educators must recognize that it's not just the underperforming or failing learners who struggle and require support, and medical culture must create space for physicians to share their struggles. I really do like this emphasis on sharing. 2 for 2 articles for today, emphasis on sharing, and all the other ones that we read earlier too emphasize sharing what's going on. Feedback can be a powerful reality check, critical for navigating underperformance, failure, or self-doubt. But to be valuable, feedback must reconcile with an individual self-assessment. What that means is it must be together. They must make sense. Like if you're giving someone like, oh, you're so amazing, but I think I'm shitty, I'm not gonna be listening to like how amazing I am. Ooh, here, despite their earned degrees, scholastic honors, high achievement on standardized tests, praise and professional recognition from colleagues and respected authorities, do not experience an internal sense of success. Even with all these accolades and things to say, I'm this great, they're like, nah, I can't do it. Not me. It's linked with perfectionism. Okay, psychological distress, that's true. Underprepared, negatively affect their career advancement, aka bad. Immobilized with fear. I love that they use this word here. Successful individuals, presumably, if you're successful, we just assume they find ways to manage these things effectively. Results. Participants more commonly describe recurrent feelings of self-doubt or perceptions that they were underperforming or failing. Again, this is own self-perception. I think this is the biggest part of imposter syndrome. It's our own self-perception or our own self-interpretation versus what it is based on reality. And I think that our perception is not based on reality, or it's not very accurate. That's why we need good friends or good mirrors that can show us that we trust that this is real. Okay, not all participants identified as imposters. That's good. Regardless, for many, success, positive feedback, and accolades did not buffer their feelings of inadequacy in training, in clinical situations, in academic endeavors, and leadership positions. Some participants, including those in advanced career stages, frequently questioned their knowledge or the validity of their achievements. So interesting. So it happens to everyone. I think that's really interesting because basically what they're saying is despite the success, people telling them and the accolades that earned along the way, they still didn't believe that they were deserving of this thing because of bing, 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 self-perception. Huge, giant self-perception. I'm really interested in like what contributed to that self-perception. Okay, so it seems like this whole self-doubt thing's a spectrum. They're saying that it's on either end. That's where you're gonna find most of these challenges. For some, self-doubt seemed unusually persistent and prominent. Others fell in the middle, experiencing sometimes self-doubt. Women, minority groups, that makes sense. I'm trying to even think of like women in gaming. That double, I'm a gamer, then I'm a female in gaming, which is even like another double layer. Interesting. They're like, they're not sure if women were more prone to feelings of self-doubt or more willing to share about them. I'm gonna highlight this. Self-doubt was exacerbated or made worse in situations where confidence must be shown but is not felt. And these are some examples. Transitions to new profession, challenges, or commentary. You're supposed to show confidence, but if you don't feel confidence, that made your imposter syndrome worse. Makes sense to me. And the transition to the new position, you're the boss now. Oh my God, they're gonna find out that I don't know anything. That makes them more nervous. Makes sense. Maybe going to a new team after you've proven yourself at some type of competition. Oh my God, they're gonna find out that I know nothing or that I'm not the top laner. So these transitions made it worse and made it longer. Because they transitioned more, they made the self-doubt more. The feeling of wanting to impress and to not screw things up. This lingered everywhere. Has anyone else have these feelings of wanting to impress people or not wanting to screw up? Super common. So people who feel that they are not from an elite or hold an elite status are more likely to fall into imposter syndrome because now they're in medical school and all these other people they perceive as elite people. And so if I'm not elite, then what am I doing here? I wonder how many people feel like that after they hit a certain rank. This feeling, I feel like I belong. So this is all feelings. And what are feelings? They're a perception. And if I know anything, perceptions aren't always accurate. You color your own experience with your own perception. Participants perceived that extensive feedback was typically reserved for learners who were underperforming or failing. This perception, again, of who receives feedback and why you're getting feedback versus actually listening to the feedback. We're missing the point of the feedback or the critique. And if these doctors were teetering between insecurity and overconfidence as soon as they received that piece of feedback, it wasn't the feedback, it was what I perceived the feedback was for. If I thought it was because only people that get feedback are bad students, then I must be a bad student, thus negatively affecting their confidence. Okay, lack of helpful feedback. Again, with this perception, the absence of feedback was taken to mean as if they're performing well. While for others, feedback created doubts about their competence that affected their confidence. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. What does feedback mean to you? That's the question here. When you receive feedback, how do you even interpret that feedback? When you get a bad grade on a test, do you automatically think, oh, I'm stupid, thus I got a bad grade? Or is it a sign that, oh, this means that I need to review this and learn this a little bit more? It's not that I'm stupid, it's just maybe I didn't review it as much as I should have. So even the interpretation of what this X thing means, which is affected by our perception, interestingly, that it could go either way. If I get feedback, it's because I'm shitty or I'm stupid. But if I don't get feedback because they don't care or they must think I'm stupid, but on the other side, other people are saying, oh, if I don't get feedback, that means I'm good. So really interesting, this whole interpretation of what feedback means. The question here becomes, what pieces of evidence is meaningful? These are shaking confidence because they're focusing on bad clinical outcomes, patient complaints, poor teacher evaluations. So they're focusing on these negative things that must mean I'm negative too. Interesting. Sometimes even success had a downside. If you keep progressing and you don't understand why you're getting the call or why they're giving you these new positions, it's more challenging to accept that you are deserving of that position. Definitely a balancing act, a dance between humility and confidence. This self-perception thing is just racking my brain, dude. How do we manage the self-doubt? Managing was, however, challenging challenging because aspects of medical culture seem to perpetuate, even to train, feelings of insecurity. For instance, showmanship was described as a widespread cultural value. Performing confidently was perceived to be as, if not more important than possessing actual medical knowledge or procedural skill. I think this is huge. And why I think this is so interesting is because if this is a cultural thing, they're talking about the culture. And what is a culture? It's basically a giant group of people believing or acting in the same way. If that culture, it reinforces that performing confidently was perceived to be as, if not more important than possessing actual medical knowledge or procedural skills. So doing something confidently sometimes was even more important than what you actually knew. So it's almost as if this culture reinforces acting confident versus knowing what you're doing. I think that's not only in the medical field. I'm thinking like this statement here is like also in the current state of esports. I'm thinking about coaches. Like how many coaches are there sounding really good? They're able to point out these mistakes that players are making, or, oh, the macro play should have been this, this, and this. But here's the thing. Anyone can point out a mistake. The real question with coaches is, do they actually possess the game knowledge or procedural skills to teach their players how to execute that thing, how to set up a dragon, how to play around a baron? No, they can't, because they can just show you how we messed up, but they can't teach or drill or figure out how to make their players think about how to take the dragon or the baron, or even how to think how to pilot their champion. It's kind of shitty where confident people that can speak well, like just pretend, act, or just say it confidently, almost seem like they have more value than that person that actually knows what they're doing. But it's so funny that the people who actually know stuff have this internalized, oh no, they're gonna find me out, because they're not that confident person, because they're comparing. But in actuality, it's like flipped on its head, where that maybe more insecure person actually knows more about what they're doing than that person that says they know what they're doing. I think this is really interesting on perception. Like my head keeps coming back to this perception of things, or how we perceive things to be. Basically, imposter syndrome, just come back around to it, is this like inaccurate belief in your perception, or an inaccuracy in your own thought process or reality check of how things are. And I think there's a lot of cognitive fallacies in imposter syndrome. And the one thing that I keep thinking about is having a good understanding of what you are able to do, what you don't know, and being authentic and honest and open in that, and being willing to sit in the uncomfortableness to maybe learn those things, maybe receive that feedback. But at the same time, because their perception's already a little warped, even when people provide good feedback or good information, it goes through that filter in their head of, this is all bad things. Because even going back to the, why are these people giving me feedback? Oh, only like dumb people or bad students get feedback, versus like, oh no, I'm trying to help. Even in receiving that, there is a negative thing that doesn't help them improve, or just colors that experience. What I really like about these articles thus far is that they're doctors who have years of training. Sometimes it doesn't go away, but instead now it's really figuring out how we can manage these things, ask ourselves, is this real? How accurate is our perceptions of the world around us? The question then becomes, how can you ensure that your perception of the world around you is accurate? I think that's the hard question that we have to ponder. I'm not trying to say like you need to be paranoid. It's like, are we living in the Matrix, man? Is this real? But at the same time, I think it is definitely of like, I think this way and I see this thing this way. Is it really how it is? Is this fear really valid? And if I drill down to the end of my fear, am I afraid that this thing is going to kill me? Is this really a real life and death threat? Because when we talk about anxieties, really, if we drill it down, is like, I'm gonna die. So are you really going to die? Is this really going to hurt you? And understand that your brain is not really great at discerning between actual physical harm and emotional feeling harm. And again, this article and the article before really emphasized for me that your feelings and how you feel about things aren't always an accurate measuring stick of how things really are, because feelings are so easily manipulated and so easily influential of how we see things. I think that's really it. I hope everyone was able to learn a little more about imposter syndrome. If you guys have topics that you guys would like me to read more about and give you some information or read with you. But until then, get some rest, remember to stretch, drink some water. And as always, I'm Dr. Ryan Terrell, your PsychSensei, teaching you how to think, play, and slay, baby, one game at a time. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Shoots. Bye.